Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk. My name is Marlene, and I'm going to be talking about the growth of the Python community in Africa. And I'm also going to be going a bit more into detail about some of the things that are happening in Zimbabwe in terms of the artificial intelligence community there as well. So I'm going to start with talking a bit, introducing myself and letting you know a little bit more about myself. Like I said before, I come from a country called Zimbabwe. And not a lot of people know Zimbabwe unless you're following the news. We have a lot of interesting things happening in Zim in terms of politics, but we are on top of South Africa. Some people know South Africa, and so Zimbabwe is the country on top of South Africa. Another thing about me, I am a director at a non-profit organization called ZimboPy. Those are the young ladies from my organization in that picture. But basically, my organization teaches girls how to code, specifically in Python, and I really enjoy the work we do. We target mainly girls from underprivileged areas of our city and really try and give them good tools, as well as mentoring girls at university levels in the country, girls who are studying computer science or tech-related subjects. And finally, I am also a director for the Python Software Foundation. I really have enjoyed being on the board. I'm on the board with Kushal Das, who's actually also going to be speaking right after me. So if you have any questions actually about the Python Software Foundation, you can come to ask me, Kushal, or Carol Willing, she's also here, about the work that the Python Software Foundation does. So before I actually go on, I wanted to kind of outline some of the reasons why I feel like this talk that I'm about to give is relevant to PyCon India. And the first reasons why I think that this talk is relevant to this particular group is that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration between Africa and India. So our economies have come from very similar backgrounds. For example, in my specific country, Zimbabwe, we are a developing country, but in the past few months, our president has really been clear about how they would like to move the country forward from being a developing country into becoming a middle-income country. And in the conversations about how we're going to do that, a lot of talk has come out about how technology is one of the main ways they want to do that. And in those conversations, India has actually come up a lot of times because India, or you guys, have definitely used technology in order to move from being a developing country into being a middle-income country. And that's something that Zimbabwe is trying to do, and we're actually trying to take a lot of the models that have happened here in India for you guys to be so, I think India should be in the top 3 or 4 of the fastest developing economies in the world. And so we're trying to model a lot of our development around what you guys have done. So I think there's a lot of room for collaboration. As well, I do believe that there are lots of similarities between India and many African countries. For example, the traffic in India is very scary. I almost got run over like 5 times trying to get here to the conference. Struggled a little bit. But it's really cool actually to see similarities, because a couple of months ago I was in Nigeria, and you know the little cars, the rickshaws that you have, I think they're called rickshaws. In Nigeria they also have them, but they're called torotoros. So if you're ever in Nigeria and you see a rickshaw, you just call them a torotoro. But other than traffic, we definitely have a lot of things in common in terms of some of the problems that our people are facing here in India are similar to the problems that are being faced in different parts of Africa. And a really cool thing is that the solutions that you have here already in India, I've already come across some amazing solutions and things that are different that I've never seen before. and these are solutions that could easily be transferred to African countries and be very, very successful. And in the same way, I do believe that there are African solutions that can definitely be transferred from the African community to the Indian community as well. And so I would really, really encourage everyone here to be interested in what's going on in Africa and to look for room for collaboration with the Python community there, which is what I'm going to be talking a bit more about. I'm going to be mentioning lots of PyCons as well. So jumping straight into my talk. So in order to model, to represent the growth of communities, I'm actually going to be using grant distribution as a measure for growth. So usually what happens is the PSF gives grants to mature communities. So when a community is working towards maybe hosting a meetup or things like that, the PSF will give funding in order to make that meetup successful, or a conference like this. And so usually when there's a mature community that's based around Python, they will apply to the PSF for funding. And so I think this is a really great way to kind of measure and see exactly where growth has happened across the region and across the world. It's obviously not 100%, but I'm going to use that today. But I'll start with this map, and on this map, as you can see, this was the early stages of the PSF's existence, the Python Software's Foundation's existence. And in 2010 to 2011, a few countries received funding from the PSF, and the countries all the countries represented that are in blue. The only African country to receive funding in 2010 was South Africa. So I'm going to speak a bit more on this. It's really cool, actually, to see that India was one of the first countries to receive funding from the PSF, and India is actually one of the oldest Python communities in the world. So you guys are doing an amazing job. Don't know how you're doing it. Yes, India. I think we can clap for that. But in the first 4 years, actually, of the PSF's existence, as you can see on the map, there was growth in almost all other parts of the world. Some parts are left out, I think, in Europe. But there was some growth significantly in Asia and places like that. But for the first 4 years of the PSF's existence, there was no other country besides South Africa that was receiving funding. So we can assume that there were no other mature countries in Africa, mature communities in Africa that were using Python. And whenever I go to different African countries, I usually ask people, why do you think that, for example, South Africa is one of the only African countries that's really doing well, that's really producing, innovation. There's so many amazing innovations coming out of South Africa. The word Ubuntu, for example, is a South African word. It means unity. And so many amazing innovations that are coming from there. But a lot of other places in Africa take time to innovate or to adapt to new languages. And a lot of the responses that I got for this was, one, some people say that there's a lot of bureaucracy. So there's a tendency, I know in Zimbabwe, for anyone that is studying maybe computer science and wanting to become a developer, to stick with what they learned at university. And so if they learned C at university, they're sticking to C until the day that they die, or until they are threatened by their boss that you're going to be fired. But usually they really don't like to adapt and learn new things outside of that. However, the problem with this is that our universities oftentimes in Africa, and I think across the world, I was actually just talking to someone and discussing how sometimes with universities, they tend to be a bit outdated and to be not really moving with the times. And so Python has taken some time in order to be adapted or taken in universities in other parts of Africa. So a lot of people were saying they're struggling with bureaucracy and things like that, but I would love to hear your opinions and see if you also struggle in India as well with bureaucracy and trying to get people to adapt new languages or new methods and things like that. So, yes. But finally, in 2014, there was some activity outside of South Africa. And this is actually a really, really cool story, really interesting. A country called Namibia. There was a guy called Daniele Procida, who actually comes from the United Kingdom. And Daniele, who works on PyCon UK, saw that, okay, there's not a lot of community work going on in Africa. And he decided that he wanted to initiate growth of the community in a different part of the world where he saw that growth wasn't happening. And so what he did was he actually got on a plane and went to Namibia. And through that, he actually met with a university student who was teaching young children Python for fun. She was teaching them kind of in her spare time. Her name is Jessica Upani. And they actually got together with a group from Cardiff University that's based in the United Kingdom and ended up actually launching the first ever PyCon Namibia. And this was, amazing because it was the second PyCon to be hosted on the African continent. And it really is amazing. And this is one story that I particularly like because it shows us that community is not just about the place where you are, and it's not just up to the really big, influential people. Daniela is an influential person, for sure. But I think that all of us can contribute to the global community. And like I said before, I think collaboration is really key in order for us to have a global community that's growing effectively. So one of the things that came out of this PyCon actually was that a lot of people from the region came to this conference. Some people from Zimbabwe and some people from Nigeria attended this conference from the region. And after that, what actually ended up happening is those people went back to their home countries and they started PyCons in their home countries. So we see in the next year, in 2015, there was more activity that was happening in the continent. We saw that Nigeria actually started to apply for grants. They had a lot of Django Girls initiatives coming up. They had a lot of smaller meetup groups. And just recently, actually, in 2017, they held their first ever PyCon Nigeria. And it was super, super amazing. I was there. It was really, really exciting. Also have spicy food, very similar to India, I would say. If you like spicy food, go to Nigeria as well. But really, really great conference and actually a lot of innovation that's happening and that's coming out of Nigeria. And we're seeing a lot more larger companies actually taking an interest in Africa, and specifically in Nigeria, Google has set up a really large base there. Cisco as well has set up also a company that is based in Nigeria. So a lot of amazing technology is coming from there, and so there's a lot of potential in that region of the world. And then with Zimbabwe, which is where I came from, a guy called Humphrey Batau actually attended the PyCon in Namibia. And after he attended, he was inspired to immediately come back home. And he got a bunch of us together and he said, I want to be able to organize a PyCon for the Zimbabwean community. And so we actually had our first PyCon in 2016 was the first PyCon in Zimbabwe to have happened. It was really fantastic. And actually from that point on, the community in Zimbabwe actually started growing stronger. And although Python was not a language that was well known at the time, members of our community started to do things to try and make sure that Python was being adopted. We have a guy called Tendai who's in the community, and he's a lecturer at a university. So he decided that he was going to actually advocate for Python to be adopted into the school curriculum. And now at his university, it's actually being taught as the introductory computer science language to all the computer science students in his university. And so I think our community is really, really seeing major growth, and this is basically just from coming together and actually encouraging each other in community and at conferences like this. And so more actually about what's going on in Zimbabwe specifically is there's a huge interest in artificial intelligence. I know that AI is a buzzword right now, and it can seem very dramatic and over the top, I think, sometimes. But something really cool is that our government, the Zimbabwean government, is really taking an initiative to try and develop the artificial intelligence industry, specifically in Zimbabwe. And so we have a center. It's called the High Performance Center that's based in Harare, Zimbabwe. And at the center, we have 2 supercomputers that actually operate from there. That's a picture from the center. But there's amazing work that's coming out of that space. There's a group that actually meets regularly to be taught on artificial intelligence. They're using a lot of TensorFlow and Jupyter notebooks and things like that. And so they're really working towards actually giving people the skills to join the artificial intelligence industry. And so the AI lab that's going to be built is actually they're targeting to make it one of the largest AI labs in the world, and also the largest AI lab in terms of GPUs as well. So it's really exciting, the work that's happening. And something that I also want to mention is that the lab is definitely looking for collaborations. They're building a lot of offices and things like that for people who have artificial intelligence startups or who want to do research in artificial intelligence. And so if you are interested in that, please let me know. Maybe you can come to Zimbabwe and also collaborate on the work that's happening there. But there's a lot of infrastructure that's being put into place in order to support people in that space as well. So I would really, really encourage any of you that would like to know more to either ping me on Twitter or to come and speak to me afterwards as well. Okay. So finally, currently in Africa, there are more than 20 countries with active Python user groups. So I feel like there's a lot of development that's going on. There are a lot of, from where we were just a few years ago, where in 2010, South Africa was the only country to actually have an active community. I think the growth has been amazing, and I think that there's so much potential that can come out of Africa. I would encourage any of you that are interested in attending PyCons to attend the new PyCons that are coming up in different parts of Africa. Ghana is a place that is just opening up a PyCon. Uganda is also a place that is planning to launch a new PyCon. So I would actually also encourage you to apply to speak at the different places or to attend even. I think we definitely are looking for more international people. And also very excited to let you know, to announce here at PyCon India, that there's going to be a PyCon Africa, and that we're planning that, sorry, not 2018, that should be a 9. In 2019, there's going to be a PyCon Africa 2019. I'm actually the chair for PyCon Africa, and I'm super, super excited about what we're planning to do. This is going to be the first regional conference, and I think it's going to be really, really amazing. There are going to be speakers from across the continent, and we'd actually love to have a lot of Pythonistas from around the world coming and kind of interacting with the African community. I think a lot of times Africa is kind of sidelined, and people think, what's going to come out of Africa? A scary place. some places are scary in Africa, but not all places are scary. So I would definitely encourage you guys to come. So if you would like to know more information about that, we also have a Slack channel, and I'm also happy to answer any questions. But yeah, other than that, thank you. You can, any questions you have and things like that. Yeah. I don't know if anyone has any questions or if that's all right.
Anyone questions?
Great talk. Great work. Do you know where PyCon Africa is going to be in 2019 yet?
So the plan is to have it actually in Accra, in Ghana. I was actually just in Accra, and it's really a great place. It's very safe. It's also very affordable to travel to. So yeah, it probably will be in Accra. Yeah. I think the CFP for PyCon Africa should be open, I'm sure early next year. Yeah, probably early next year.
Hello. What's your initiative for teaching school children or college age students who don't have an education advantage in college?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Could you come closer? Yes.
How do you teach school and college age students who never had a chance in college?
Oh, okay, yes. So his question was, how, with my own organization, are we teaching school level students or people who have never been able to learn Python or computer programming in school? And I was going to say that for some of the people that we teach, actually, because we target students who come from underprivileged parts of the city, we actually sometimes meet with girls that would have never actually used a computer before in their lives. And so we actually have a curriculum that we made. It's actually an open source curriculum that we asked people to contribute to. And that curriculum actually starts from the basics of introducing students in terms of really the basics of how to use a computer, how to switch it on, what is this, what's that, and takes them all the way through to just the basics of Python programming. We still have not gotten to a level where we have taught them a lot about the Django framework, is mainly what we've also done. A lot of Django for Beginners is the book we were using. But in terms of actually getting them to the stage where they're now able to fully program in like a job setting, we are not yet at that level, but we are really just at the moment trying to focus on introducing them to the basics of Python and getting them to a place where they kind of are confident about writing code, the initial part of it. Yeah. So we have our own curriculum that we created. Yeah. Any more questions at all? Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Oh, one more question. Okay, cool.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. It was really nice.
Thank you.
But do you have any difficulties in spreading the word about getting students to sign up and join this program? Do you have any difficulties in spreading the word across?
Well, I think in Zimbabwe specifically, we don't necessarily have problems in spreading the word. We really do a lot of we reach out in several capacities. For our university students, we actually go directly to the universities and approach their computer science departments, or we will actually go to the universities and talk to the students. We also work closely with other organizations like Women in Engineering and things like that. We work closely with those groups on university campuses. But then for the other girls, in terms of the people that are in underprivileged areas of the city, we do try to go into those communities, and we work closely with social workers to identify with the schools that are in those communities and social workers to identify girls that would be a good fit for our program. We actually try to get people who have a good understanding of English and things like that, and who we think would do well in the program. So we go specifically directly. I wouldn't say we market on social media much because not everyone has access to the internet. So.